I've taught the past 20 years, kindergarten. And I think that has probably been my favorite just because of the fact that I love watching them, learn those letters and sounds and then put them together, and then just their faces light up when they clicks and they get it, and they just love that. And so that's been always my favorite, that, and then of course all the hugs, right?
Of course. Oh yes, kindergartners are definitely touchy-feely. Yes. And that you are heaven sent teaching kindergarten for 20 years. Oh my goodness, you must have patience, like extendo patience. I can imagine. Oh my goodness. How was that? Are you still in the classroom or you're not?
No, I left last June, and just things have changed so much in the education system. When I started, kids were allowed to kind of learn and be more kids. And I feel like year after year, there's just more pressure put on them to get these test scores. And, it's first they were supposed to be reading by this level, and then this level, and then this level, but kids haven't changed, that hasn't changed. And every kid has different needs. And so the last few years, especially since we've been I was doing online learning during COVID. When I went back in the classroom, it was just really hard. There was a lot of behaviors and a lot of kids struggling, and I felt like the classroom just wasn't the same. The kids, it's like they didn't have the safety they needed because the behaviors weren't being managed. And I just didn't feel like I could meet their needs anymore. And actually even teach anymore, and so I kind of started looking into like helping kids with reading online, like I was doing when I was teaching during COVID. And so that's when I started last year. While I was in the classroom, I was also starting the business. And then this summer, and then all through this fall, I've been tutoring kids and working with kids in small groups, teaching them whatever reading skills they need. I've had kids from 4 years old to 11, 12 years old, everything in between. And just because they're 5 doesn't mean that they're at a kindergarten level. They might be at a preschool level. They might be at a second grade level. But the thing I love is that I can meet their needs like wherever they're at. I don't have to be like, okay, well, you're in kindergarten, you have to learn at the kindergarten level, or, so I do love that, that I can slow down if I need to and help a kid get where they need to be and not be pushing them ahead like it was being in the school system. Because I would feel bad, like this kindergartner would be going to first grade and I'm like, they're not ready, or they come to kindergarten and they're not even ready to come to kindergarten yet,
That's the big part. I was gonna, it's like, I know my oldest started kindergarten. She did go to kindergarten. And when she went, I talked to the kindergarten teacher. It was shocked me. My first question I was going to ask you: were you the only teacher in the classroom?
Yes, I did have a paraprofessional last year for special needs children. So
How
they were
many?
supposed to be specifically for the special needs children.
Gotcha. How many students did you have, like typically on your roster?
I had 27.
Oh my gosh.
The 1 year, and then the other year was like 18, but honestly, the 18 that year was harder than the 27.
Really? 18,
just
yeah, that's
because of
still the ratio 18-1 is just too much.
Yeah, but that was the most I've ever had, was the 27. Before, I had been like the top had been 24 ever. But yeah, it was a tough year.
27 is like adult abuse. Like that shouldn't even be legal. That's
right?
wild.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Just imagine like 5 of them. This is a lot. But 27 5-year-olds. Oh my gosh, that's
And
oh,
that year
you're
I didn't have a para that year.
heaven
We
sent.
were
You're an
given one
angel.
to
You
share.
fell. You fell down here. It was like, oh, you know what, guys? I'll go in the classroom. Don't worry about it. I'll take it. That is wild. And that should not be legal. How can
Agreed.
you meet that many needs? How
You
can you
can't.
identify that many needs? What I was about to share about my daughter and her kindergarten experience, speaking with her kindergarten teacher, she told me the year previous, and I've shared this before on the podcast, like last season, but previously, the year before, she was telling me how she had, I think, want to say 22 students on her roster, still wild. But she said 9 of them came in the classroom, never even having held a pencil before.
That's hard. Yeah. Or a scissors or a crayon. Yep.
So that right there stuck with me too, because it's like, oh my gosh, parents are really allowing their children to step into the system already so far behind. Because my young lady had been in preschool twice already. She had went for 3 and 4. And so when she got to 5, it was like, of course, she's very, very in tune with all of this stuff. And just to imagine, like, some kids are sitting at home, not trying or not being pushed to do anything that will prepare them for a system that they're ultimately going to go into. I can see if the parent wasn't going to send them there, but you're sending your child into the public school system, and you know that there's standards, you know that there's milestones, you know that there's, levels that they have to be at. And that just broke my heart. Like, oh my gosh, like, no, parents, no. Please, please, please prepare your children for this. How did that look for you?
Yeah, there was always at least, I would say, 5 kids that, didn't or had never had sat and listened to a story or followed directions or didn't know how to put their coat on or
Oh man.
put their shoes on or, just those basic skills that, coming in when there's 20 some kids and you're spread thin,
Yes.
yeah, that's one of the things that's been my goal for this coming summer is to have a class like prepare your kid for kindergarten
For
class.
kindergarten, like a kindergarten readiness type deal.
Yeah, because I know our district offers it, but it's 1 week or 2 weeks, and then it's like if parents can't make that, and then I thought, well, with online it'd be flexible, and I would just give them that like basic skills like some letters, some counting, colors, how to hold a pencil. That's the really important one, or how to hold a scissors, or use a glue
Yeah.
stick, or those basic things. And then I think a lot of parents just don't know. They just don't, and I feel bad for the kids because, like you said, then they're going into somewhere where they're already set up for failure, because they're already
Yeah. Because like you say, you push them on the first grade and you're like, oh no, they're not ready. But it's like, okay, well, what do you do with that? Like
yeah.
that's a lot. That's a lot. That
Yep.
makes
And
me so sad.
it does too. Yeah. And I talk to a lot of parents that have me working with their kid, and they're like, I pulled them out of school and I'm homeschooling them now because they're a 4th grader and they're reading at a 1st, 2nd grade level. And so
Mm,
I'm, trying to help them, go back to where the skills they need to work on is, because you can't just skip 2 grades and then, and work on 4th grade skills when you don't have the 1st and 2nd and 3rd,
yes, they all
and
definitely go hand
yeah,
in hand.
yeah.
Oh wow. What state are you in, if you don't mind sharing?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Oh, okay, we were there this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we liked it. Minneapolis. We were in Minneapolis. We did an expo there at the library. I can't tell you offhand which library, but it was nice
Okay.
though. Yeah, they had a lot going on that day, so it was pretty cool. But I don't know. I'm in Arizona, and I've talked to some teachers. I've talked to some parents here, and I don't know if they're still at 48, but they were at like 48 as far as ranking goes in the public school system. They were at 48, and there's not that many
Okay.
extra states after that. So it was like,
Wow.
why are you that low? but talking to, like I said, talking to teachers and talking to principals and things of that nature, you kind of learn why they're that low. How did how beneficial do you feel standards are?
I mean, I think it gives the teacher like a basis to go off of to like, know like, okay, especially like I would say I did teach in Texas for 4 years. And the one district I taught in was a very like kids were moving constantly. It was a very low income district, and the kids were just like you'd have a kid for a month and then they
Oh
move.
man.
And they moved a lot within the district just because I think parents had a hard time like affording housing or those kind of things. It was really sad, but the one nice thing about they really had us do like a scope and sequence of standards, because when that kid moved from my school to another school to another school, there was some kind of consistency for those kids,
Mhm.
so they didn't jump all over the place when they moved. At least school was a consistent thing for them, and they're
Gotcha.
learning, they didn't always, of course all kids don't learn the same, so that is the other part of it. Like just like we were talking about earlier, having all 5-year-olds have to know this, and all 60, all
Mhm.
kindergartners know this, all first graders have to know this, and all second graders have to know this. And I feel like that's just not, I mean, even in kindergarten, they come from can't hold a pencil to another kid's reading at first, second grade level and everything in between. And I'm trying to meet all their needs.
Yeah, I
Um,
was gonna say those kids that are advanced, they and it's not necessarily that they're advanced, just ahead of the other ones, but they kind of get faded to the back, right?
I mean, I always tried to make an effort to do a group with them, but obviously you have to focus a little extra time on those kids that need to get up so that you can get them to where they need to be, because they will push them along no matter what. Like even if I've tried to fight to hold them back to not push them, and they won't listen.
Mm.
So I try to give them the best, I
Yeah,
can. And that's one thing I'm loving about like with the online and the small groups is like no matter what their age, I'm grouping them by their level, like by their need, If they need to know the letters and sounds, then I don't have to, even if they're 8, I don't have to put them in that group. I can work with them and get them, move them along in a process, but it doesn't have to be like the standard for that age.
yeah,
Um, I think it is, like the standards, like they have a place, I guess, but I think that sometimes it's a little too stringent for it to be like certain, you know, standards for certain
gotcha.
age.
How important is parent involvement at that level?
Oh, I just think parent involvement's always important. I mean, they're the kid's first teacher, and always their teacher throughout life. I mean, my dad is 92 and he's still teaching me, he's
Oh
still my teacher.
yes.
Um, so I think, yeah, that's the other thing I really liked about the online is I felt like I had such good communication with family and
Nice.
a closer bond with family. Like even their pets, I knew their dog and cat.
Oh yes.
But the parents, like, at school, it's like I would have to like send a message. It's just more of a distant communication where when you're online with the kid, well, usually their mom or dad is not too far off, and then you can just communicate like on a daily basis with the parent. They might be like, oh, and they also sometimes are just kind of listening, and like then they know what their kid is learning,
Mhm.
and then they can kind of reinforce that. Um,
Yes.
so I
Yes.
think reinforcing and good communication between teachers and tutors and parents is so important. Yeah.
Right. I feel like it definitely should be like a teamwork type of deal. Teamwork make the dream work. Like you have to
Yes,
all be
yes.
on the
I
same
say
page.
that.
Right.